Hey everyone, Justina Lee Stoltz here, your host of the Entry Point Hunting podcast, the only host that probably admits she has no idea what she's talking about. But thankfully, my guests do, and that is why I'm excited today to have Dr. Matt Ward on the show. Matt is a dedicated chiropractor and kinesiologist, and he's not just another voice in the crowded online arena. He has a firm commitment to practicing what he preaches, and Matt's journey is marked by genuine experiences. Having observed clinicians who lack hands on patient care and are inexperienced coaches offering advice out in the world, he has made it his mission to bridge the gap between theory and reality. Matt's valuable insights on injury prevention in mountain hunting and training recovery are rooted in more than 15 years of personal experience and a blend of evidence based research. As a chiropractor and a hunting guide at Arcadia Outfitters and the host of the Hard Yards podcast, Matt's extensive background in sports, including CrossFit, downhill mountain biking, and off road triathlons, alongside a wealth of educational achievements, including his time at the University of Western States and UBC, really sets him apart. He has a string of credentials behind his name, and therefore, Matt is not just talking the talk. He has walked the walk and he is making himself a trusted resource in the fitness and wellness world, which is why I'm excited to welcome him today to the show. Welcome, Matt.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited. It's not too often I get to have the questions asked to me, so it's always a nice mix. And often it's been like maybe 2 or 3 years of me podcasting mostly solo, so you get real good at talking yourself, which is like probably good and bad.
Yeah. You're usually on the other side of the mic, so today you get to be in the hot seat, and I get to do all the questioning.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's always a nice change. So yeah, thanks again for having me.
Yeah, most welcome. Maybe before we jump into what your podcast is and a few of the other things, let's tile it back and tell me, did you always have the aspiration to have that string of letters behind your name? Like, was doctor always the goal?
No, God, no. And like it's I think a lot of people can hide behind the letters behind their name. And I'm sure we've all met those people with the accolades all over the wall, and they're, maybe not like the best human being, or they can't kind of disseminate that information as well as good as they can because they've spent most of their time trying to get accolades behind their name. So
Yeah.
I don't think that, and even now, right? Like I don't often kind of, I used to have, when I had less certifications and all that stuff, I used to have them up, and then it's just like this like ridiculous wall now. And I'm like, this is so silly. Like, I think if someone wants to come see me or wants to chat with me and they appreciate what I have to say, it's because I'm listening to them as a human being and fixing the problem that they're coming to me with, or even better, sometimes just like moving them on to the person that's going to help them the best. So no, I definitely had never had that accolade. Like I had no idea what I was going to do, but I knew it was going to be something. I always liked helping people. My mom was a physio. I loved working with my hands. I spent a lot of time between logging and framing and all sorts of blue collar jobs, working with my hands. And then kind of the personal training realm. There was some time, where I was going to be a firefighter in the lower mainland.
Oh, yeah.
And then that kind of moved on and totally changed to something else. And I really enjoyed this path of rehabilitation, strength and conditioning coach. And then that kind of morphed under just the experiences and influences throughout like my maybe early to mid 20s, where I then went back to school to be a chiropractor. Even though probably like if you told that to my even 19-year-old self, I'd have called you a liar for sure. Cause like I hated chiropractors, to be honest. Like,
Really?
and I still don't love very many of them. It can be a bit of a greasy profession for sure.
I was gonna
Like
say, is that just like the classic? Everyone knows some chiro who's done something bad to somebody at some point, so they get that bad rap.
Yeah, just kind of greasy. Like I remember when I was like a Pacific sport athlete, and I was, like things were going well, and I had pretty bad back pain, and I went, and the physio wasn't really helping me at the time. And then somebody was like, oh, you should try like a chiropractor out. And so I just went to one in Nanaimo, I remember. And he was definitely a bit of a snake oil salesman. And I think I was like 14, and I was like, you're full of shit, man. And I just like walked out. And I was just like, you're absolutely full of it. Like my my like athletic back pain problem is coming from like my neck. I was like, come on, like not a chance. So
Mm,
anyways, I kind of saw through that, and I kind of painted them with that picture. And then I was working with this chiro back in the day, Jerry Ramajita, Seahawks chiro. I didn't even know he was a chiropractor at the time. I was like, where'd you go to physio school, man? And it's just he just used all the tools in the toolbox to help guys, and
yeah.
that was kind of a big influence. And then the counterpart to the Journal of Mountain Hunting, Beyond the Kill, Adam Young, he was an influence of mine in his early days
Mm,
as a sports pedorthist in Vancouver as well. So I've known him for a long time, and as the world weaves its pattern, and as you do, Adam and I both he ended up in Kelowna. I ended up in Kelowna after him, 2018, and which led to like that outdoor mountain hunting kind of craziness. And
yeah.
he's like, you
So
want to,
wait. Back up a
yeah,
second.
yeah.
So you didn't have a good perspective of chiros, and then you had a bad experience with a chiro,
Hmm.
and then somehow that just through these other dudes and that other experience was enough for you to be like, oh, you know what? I'm going to become a chiro. How
Yeah,
did
like
that
I think there's,
translate?
probably like, like there's bad in any profession, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
mechanic, real estate agent, home
Mm-hmm.
builder. It doesn't matter what it is, and there's lots of good stuff. I just didn't know, like just ignorance, really. Like I just didn't know the scope of what they learned at school. And at the
Yeah.
time, I was doing a lot of stuff. I was working alongside a few physios, and we were doing quite a few similar things. And if I wanted to I was like, am I going to go to med school, physio school, or chiro school? And then it seemed like med school wasn't really the option for me. And then it kind of felt like maybe I was going to learn some of the same things I was already doing
Mm,
at physio school, and a bunch more stuff for sure. But, at the time I was like, man, like some of these chiro, and then I was working with one as a kinesiologist. I was like, man, he knows a lot of like cool stuff, like
mm,
a lot of different autoimmune things and a lot of different functions that definitely affect the body, when we look at like the biopsychosocial model of pain. And I'm like, man, they
mm.
do get like a good education. It's what you do with it that counts.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. If you're just going to crack backs, then that might not be the whole picture, but
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah. Like that's probably, and you can make a lot of money doing that, I
Oh
think.
yeah.
But ethically, I don't know if you're doing good for everybody that's coming through the door. Um,
Mm-hmm.
which is, fighting an uphill battle, much like fighting an uphill battle is with, trying to hunt sustainably and all these sorts of things as well. So
Yeah.
I just seem to like I'm a glutton for punishment for sure.
Yeah. So, okay. You ended up in Kelowna, did you say in 2018?
Yeah.
And then you were already connected to the Beyond the Kill guys at that point.
Yeah, Adam and I were friends from something before Beyond the Kill even kind of took place, and then we started right when in 2015. We kind of connected for something called Mountain Strong, which was basically a training platform that ultimately it would have had good legs, but I was like just starting a pretty intensive school program,
Mm,
and Adam like didn't quite have the bandwidth to kind of put all his time into the online training world. Is a challenging space. You need to be like
yeah.
completely immersed in
Saturated
it.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, even in 2015, probably wasn't that much, but
Yeah.
people didn't even know what it was then.
Yeah.
Really.
More
They
of a
were like,
challenge of lack of knowledge at that point
that's
versus
right.
now it's just there's so much.
There's so much. It's like, and half of it's free, and like who do you
Yeah.
pick? And it's in a very short time span, it changed a lot.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, even most of the people that I was training online with my company before I went back to school, like that was all people who were relatively close in a circle, or like 1 degree of separation, who were
Hmm.
pretty useful in the gym. And they're like, yeah, I just need programming and a little bit of technique stuff. Like they don't
Yeah.
need me there to hold their hand.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where Adam and I connected. And then we just stayed friends. And he said, where do you think you're moving when you're done school? And I was like, I think I'm going to move up to either Vernon or Kelowna. And then it ended up being
Mm,
Kelowna. And then
nice.
I wanted to get, I was already spending a lot of time in the mountains, and I knew the hunting industry a little bit. And, from my time at Sheep Show and all sorts of different places. And I was like, oh yeah,
Mhm.
sure. Let's get into some hunting and whatnot. And he's like, you want to do a film, man? And I was like, yeah, I don't know. Sure. And then,
Had you hunted at all before? Like, have you always been a
constantly.
hunter? What's your hunting journey been like to get to that
Oh,
point?
adult onset for sure. Like
Okay.
I can't even probably legally talk about some of the hunting stuff that was back in the day on the island, man. Like some of those old boys I didn't even, yeah. I mean, just some of those old boys are just a bit different in the back, like,
Oh yeah.
deep back 40 of an FSR. It's a little
Yeah.
different. Like, yeah. So there's a lot of that stuff that I probably like probably didn't even have that good of a view of hunting, to be honest, like definitely a little bit more maybe how the public views it. If I think about it, I've
Mm.
never really thought about that too much, but if I kind of think about it, it's like, oh yeah, like I've never seen someone cut a tag, like when I was
Jeez.
young, you're like, holy shit,
Oh yeah.
what are these,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I'm sure we've got
So
all,
when was your introduction to hunting? Like it sounds like you had some smatterings throughout
yeah, probably
your
March
youth, maybe.
2019.
Oh yeah. But
Yeah.
moved to the Okanagan and then got into it
Yeah,
as an
probably
adult,
March
like
March
truly.
2019, like a lot of time around guns and stuff like that. But I mean,
Mm.
outside of that, like, yeah, March 2019, spring bear, and
Okay.
then that fall 10 days mountain hunting elk, and then which is the BTK, the first film I was in, BTK. And
Yeah,
then
so that
after,
was did you go straight from that from like first real major big game animal spring bear and then 4 or 5 months later let's do a film of me hunting for
oh yeah,
10 days?
that film was planned out probably in like 2018, I think, end of
Okay.
2018, beginning of 2019.
Yeah.
Yep. And then obviously segments on the podcast interspersed. And then just like, and to now I think I'm 88 days hunting this year or something like that. So, I mean, just
Yeah.
short time span, but the people I'm around and, like I know
Yeah.
guys who've been hunting for 20 years, they do it for 10 days. Right.
Yeah.
And then they go to the same spot, they sleep in a wall tent and that's it
Yeah.
versus, depends
So
the level of commitment.
yeah. Yeah, or time availability too, right? That's
Oh,
always a
and
limiting
that's,
factor. People can't get time off work.
or they choose to do other things with their time. Like I
Yeah.
have buddies who
Priorities. Yeah.
choose to go to Hawaii instead
Yep.
of, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They choose to go to a ski chalet instead, right? And you've
Mhm.
got
Mhm.
versus if you take all your time in the fall, if you
Mhm.
can, you can put a lot of time in for sure.
Totally. Yeah. And so for those who maybe haven't seen that first recorded hunt, that fall hunt, um, maybe just give us the Coles Notes version. What was the inspiration and the goal and what was the outcome of that?
The outcome was like it was a good precursor to probably what hunting elk's really like in the southern part of this province, that's for sure.
Mm.
BC in general maybe, but definitely the southern part where we were in the West Kootenays. Lower density, very very thick, big high terrain, big steep terrain.
Mhm.
You're sometimes you're lucky just to get into them.
Yeah.
And that's probably like a pretty good, now that with what I kind of have slowly picked up over the years, the few years doing it, probably yeah, like when you're cannonballing in for, 1 10-day trip, uh,
Mhm.
you've never been into an area before. I mean, you're probably going to be pretty lucky to come out of there, especially with a bow. So
Mhm.
it was a great first trip, right? Like
Mhm. You
so
were
many,
successful.
no, God, no. I mean,
No.
what's
Oh.
success though? What is that marked by?
You okay, yeah.
Is that a cut
Did you
tag?
cut a first tag?
No, God, no. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, not at all. Didn't I mean, still, like, didn't even see a bull elk. Chased one for
Mhm.
a while. Yeah, close to Creston, chased one for a little bit of time, but I mean, other than that, you can't ask for much more, really. Like when you're going out and getting
No.
encounters,
To
first
get
time,
to, yeah, have
didn't even know
anything.
what I was doing.
I've hunted the Kootenays the last 2 years, for a week at a time looking for moose or elk. I've been fortunate enough to have a moose draw in the same area for 2 years in a row.
Cool.
And so it's either moose or elk, and yeah, I was there for 7 days last year and 8 days this year already and have yet to hear an elk or see one at all. I've heard and seen moose, so that's been, at least there's something happening, but elk are a very elusive animal so far in my experience.
They take time, man. They take time.
Yeah.
Like the best killers I know for elk, I mean, they basically hunt all of September. Like
Mhm.
all of September, beginning of October, right? You're
Yeah.
out and you know the area, you've spent time there, you've been there all year. Like I
Mhm.
think the people that I've tried to surround myself by who are successful, they also do it the right way, which is like putting in a lot of work, right?
Yeah.
Like that's it versus just kind of like, smash and bang a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And so the people you are spending your time around are some pretty good and experienced hunters. So maybe
For
tell us
sure.
a bit about, you started to dive into how you got truly into Beyond the Kill, other than like your first few hunts there, and then now what's that looking like as far as your involvement?
With Beyond the Kill?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the podcast, I have like my own segment, which I've kind of, which is, I just took a break over the fall here just because I've been away a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll be kind of back up and running in November probably
Okay.
for a bit of time. So
And that's a
came on.
fitness segment on mountain fitness.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Health and wellness, mountain
Mm-hmm.
fitness, mountain rehab, whatever you want to call it. Um, Off the Beyond the Kill podcast called Hard Yards Performance. For a long
Mm-hmm.
time, it was called Quick and Dirty with Wardo because I do these short segments and I still do short segments,
Mm-hmm.
anywhere from like 5 to 15 minutes on, one thing to look at when you're dealing with knee pain, like strengthening a calf and looking at these few things versus listen to a podcast that's 2 hours long of me talking about like your low back, your hip, your knee, your ankle, your
Yeah.
calf, the rehab for it, some strengthening exercise. You're like, you're probably not going to pick up anything, like it's
Yeah.
just like, wow, that guy knows a lot, but how I can't apply any of that. I don't even remember what he talked about. So
Mm-hmm.
we kind of went with that
Especially if
short
people are
form.
only doing the audio and not seeing the visual, that's can be challenging for
Big,
fitness exercise type things
big,
and
big time,
protocols.
right? So I mean, a lot of time spending answering questions in DMs on the Instagram and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then a lot of people have seen me in clinic, or a lot of people doing like, for a while there, I was seeing a lot of people via video actually, which worked
Yeah.
super well, right? Because it's super easy for me to diagnose what's happening as far as like biomechanics and some exercise to fix something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but anyways, yeah, so that's kind of still about all I'm doing, and then the odd project or so crops up.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we'll have to see what more transpires. And
Yeah.
then this year, apart from that, like the hard yards performance side of things, like I'm going to be putting quite a bit more time into the Instagram side of things this winter with a lot of
Mm-hmm.
videos and content coming out. Probably do like a big hunting fitness program as well, um, and then
So
also some like PDF rehab type stuff for
mm,
like neck, back, shoulder, that kind of thing. That's going to be relatively all encompassing.
yeah. And so maybe chat or talk to that a little bit. So you are a chiro at Vallejo Health Clinic
That's
currently.
right. Yeah.
And is the majority of your clientele coming in from the hunting community, or like talk about why you have a focus on that, and if it is specific to just the hunting community or does anybody who's out in the wilderness?
Yeah, so I think that's the big thing, right? Like you start to see like even if you're walking up and down Knox twice a week, it's
Mm-hmm.
those people generally have the same knee pain as someone who's, spending 30 days in the Sheep Mountains in northern BC. Like it's still your ankle doesn't move properly, your
Yeah.
hip is unstable. Like it doesn't the I see pro athletes in the clinic, they have the same problems as you and I do,
Yeah.
and everybody else. So it's just, some people's ability to fix them is always a little bit different, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there's no, and I just also saw there was this a general lack of awareness from the mountain hunting community on like
Mm-hmm.
that there was something that they could do to help their back,
Mm-hmm.
help their neck, help their shoulder. Oh, I can't draw my bow anymore because this. So I switched to, I don't bow hunt anymore. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I can't hunt anymore because all my pack is, it hurts my back the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
All my neck gets tight when I'm, looking through binoculars for too long. Like these are all the same. Generally speaking, they're all the same problems as, oh, I sit behind a desk for a long time. The right side
Mm-hmm.
of my neck gets very tight,
Mm-hmm.
so on and so forth, right? Like except you sometimes need it explained by a person who's doing the same thing to get the
Yeah.
buy-in from the person who's out there, right?
Yeah.
Like,
That the experience that they're talking about.
right. Like, I was up at Arctic Red this summer in Northwest Territories, and one guy was trailing in, and he's ridden horses his whole life. He was a rodeo guy, and he's just like, oh man, I can see he's like fiddling with his back and his hip and stuff like that. It's no different than what I see. I had a new patient today who's just like, oh yeah, this has been getting like a little bit worse over the years. Like I just went to pull my kid's hockey bag out of the SUV and felt something weird in my low back. And
Mm,
it's the same, like, some internal rotation problem on the right side with the inside leg muscles too tight, the outside leg muscles not doing
mhm.
enough stability. Doesn't
Man,
matter.
I need to come see you. I pulled my back picking up a cooler of ice cream for my block party event the other day.
There you go, right? Like, and it's going to be the same as this. Like, here's this like badass rodeo guy who like sheep hunts for, he's a sheep guide for, 6 months or 4 months of the year, and
Mm,
he's just this like awesome dude. It's generally speaking a lot of the same stuff. It's just like, what level of buy-in somebody's going to have, and how can I explain it
yeah.
to someone in a certain way in certain terms. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of the biggest thing. So I saw that niche, and also to be honest, I'd be on the Beyond the Kill podcast. Adam and I would shoot the shit about something for an hour, and then I'd just have like my DMs would fill up with like, you got to talk about this, you got to talk about
Mhm.
this, you got to talk about this. And I was like, man, there's like really something here. So
Mhm.
I'm going to kind of run with that a little bit more this winter. And then yeah, see where it goes from there. But I'm still super passionate about it and really enjoy my time. But one of the big changes that I'm going to make is I'd like to try and start doing some more in-person events. That's what I did a
That's what I
lot.
was just gonna ask you. If you're gonna have
Yeah,
like, like the online stuff is great, but like you
totally.
mentioned, there is
Yep.
a shit ton of stuff
Done.
online, resources, things you can find, free PDFs, little videos here or there. I
Yep.
think there's a huge need or
Yep.
tangible market for people that want to show up to maybe a smaller event
Yep.
where they're gonna get some immediate questions asked of like, hey, my back hurts and what do I do?
Totally.
And you have the ability to show right there and for them to do it and for you to correct and say, no, do it this way or turn your knee out
Yep.
more or whatever.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, hit the nail on the head. I love that more myself. Like, obviously the online market's fantastic because you can directly kind of affect a lot of people in a
And your
like
reach is so
because
much
of it.
bigger.
Your
You have no
reach is
idea
great, right?
who's
But
watching. Yeah.
it fills my cup to spend time with people in person and
Hmm.
and go in. And so yeah, there's like some of those things that I'd like to do. Like, I'd like to try and get down to some of the brands that I've worked with over the years. Like, been writing for Western Hunter this year.
Cool.
Which has been great on basically all the stuff that we're talking about right now.
Hmm.
And I would love to get down in the off season for those guys and maybe put a workshop together with the Wilderness Athlete crew, do some stuff at
Hmm.
Outdoorsman, see the Western Hunter Squad, especially the writers and contributors. There's all sorts of things like that I want to start creating. We were looking at doing one. The first one was going to be at Tanner's, like Frontiersman Gears grand opening. We were going to do a little something beforehand, just kind of
Hmm.
kept getting pushed back because just life and construction happens.
Yeah.
But I think next year I'm going to start running some of that stuff out of there and then just kind of see where it goes. But get back to those in-person events that like
Hmm.
I used to do all the time in the CrossFit community in like all sorts of different, clinical settings. You just have such a better time, and the
Yeah.
information that you're passionate about and trying to get across always works a little bit better. You're like, oh yeah, nice. And just the
Hmm.
little nuances of like not bending through like your low back. You need to actually feel what's happening in your thoracic spine to like help the scapula pull back to hold your bow,
Hmm.
like all sorts of little crap like that,
Yeah.
it's just tough online, right? So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the
Definitely.
plan. That's probably the biggest thing for me for 2020. What year is it? 2024. That's
2024. Yeah.
yeah, next year, 2024.
Yeah.
And then yeah, that and a couple other things on the go as well, but that's going to be a big one, is trying to get down and do some in-person work for sure.
Cool. Very cool. So people
Yeah.
can look forward to finding those opportunities coming up in the near future.
Yeah, I think we're gonna also like I did that ruck event last year for conservation. We got 16 people out actually, which was fantastic. $100 a head, which then raised $1,600. It bought one collar for sheep,
Yeah.
right? So now
And
that's I
that was a hike, right?
yep, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So ruck, and then included with that was like, like shot the shit about any injury questions that might come
Hmm.
up and so on and so if we can I'd like to expand that a little bit. And Matt McCabe from the Wild Sheep Society of BC and I are putting together a ruck next year in the shoe laps and overnighter. So we'll do
Oh,
like some
cool.
gear testing and run through your system. The
Yeah.
shoe laps in July is just gorgeous anyways. So, and that
Yeah.
sheep population is struggling bad out there. So we're looking to get, again, I'd like to get 16 people, $100 a head, and try and provide even more value, and then do a sheep
Hmm.
count with it as well. And
Cool.
then I'm looking at some sponsors to make it pretty freaking slick. Like, I'd like to get
Yeah.
everyone a pack. I'd like to get everyone, learning how to
Wow.
age sheep, learning how to count sheep, like
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. I think super important. So,
Oh, yeah. Being
and
able
a
to
sense
combine
of
something you're
community, man.
passionate about with
Yeah,
the conservation aspect too, right? Because those are two
totally.
two sides of the same coin if you're going to be in the wilderness and hunting community is that you can't just do one thing, which is the consuming end of it. You
Right.
at some point there has to be that conservation aspect too, so that's pretty
Right.
cool.
And especially if you can kind of like layer that in with like some gear testing and or like,
Hmm.
testing some new pieces. How's my fitness doing? How's this
Yeah.
knee pain going? I've got It's the beginning of July, so you've really got like a few weeks till the sheep opener and like those opening sheep hunts start. So,
Hmm.
there's a lot of stuff like that that I think is going to be interesting. And like I said, it's tough to get eyes on that shoe lap sheep population, and it doesn't look like it's doing very well right now. So,
Yeah.
I'm super excited for that. We just got this is actually like probably the first time anyone even knows about it outside of the WSSBC crew.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Okay. Woohoo.
and that kind of thing. So I'm like really excited. I'm going to be hammering on that on social media, and that's next July. So I'm giving people a lot of
A lot
time.
of
I'm
heads up.
planning a
Yeah.
long way out to
Yeah.
try and make that happen.
So in relation to that a little bit,
Yep.
you kind of touched on for a second there about the where's my fitness level at. So I mean, I had you come in and do an event for backcountry hunters and anglers and talk about mountain fitness all year round, not just that 2 weeks leading up to a hunt and when that happens.
Right.
And one of our listeners had sent in a question in preparation for this, and they said, okay, if you could only recommend 3 activities or exercises for somebody to do to try and maintain their fitness level all year round, what would be your 3 top choices of exercises?
My
You can
three
only
top,
pick 3.
my three exercises or activities.
Oh.
Sorry, you
Mm.
said is it exercises on the question?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, that's fine. Sorry, you said activities first, and I was like, "Oh, this will be super simple." I'm like, "You're just gonna like," yeah. But anyways,
I mean,
yeah.
you can give us both. You can give us 3 activities and 3 exercises.
Well, I mean, 3 activities is super simple. You want to do basically some consistent like zone 2 cardio, so that doesn't matter what it is. Any
Mm.
form you want to do probably like 180 minutes a week. So that could be you could split it up into whatever amount of that you want. You could do
Mhm.
1 day a week or you could do 3 days a week or whatever.
Yeah.
Where you're basically keeping it a talking pace. That's like absolutely. That keeps your cardiovascular system and your aerobic capacity always ready to peak a little bit more. You do
Mm.
that, you do resistance training, whatever way, shape, and form that works for you as well, whether it's with kettlebells or barbell stuff or a mix of it all.
Mhm.
Mix of it all is probably the best. So there's 1 and 2. And then your third one, I'd say, is probably some sort of like yoga or stretching routine. Like
Mm.
you'll be probably like fit for life if you
Yeah.
consistently do that. Like that's it,
Yeah.
like
Yeah, you
three
can
days,
join
three
the
days a week of
yogis of the world. Yeah.
3 days a week of resistance training, 1 day a week of some yoga or stretching routine, whatever works for you, and then like
Mhm.
180 minutes a week of zone 2. If that's all you did, you'd probably be in pretty good shape.
Yeah.
Like you'd probably be in pretty good shape. Like
Nice.
you could nuance that a little bit to like get real and like really fine tuned, but if you just
Mhm.
did that, you'd be in great shape. Yeah,
Yeah,
for
amazing.
hunting season. But
And
if
for
that's
life.
not if and for life, man, yeah, like you want to be doing this stuff when you're, hopefully when you're 65, right?
Yeah.
Um, or older, right? So, but like I hunted with a guy, like I had a client this year, 73 years old, man. Took him into the alpine mule deer hunting. It was a
Wow.
challenge. We couldn't quite kind of get to where we need to go, but man, he's out there, 73,
73, that's pretty good to still be
and
going
and
on,
like
like, a
super
non-truck hunt.
super pissed that he wasn't able to like make it happen. And
Yeah.
he's like, fuck this. He's like, I'm gonna be in better shape next year. And he's
Mm.
fired up. And I'm like,
Yeah.
like it was so motivating. It was
Yeah.
so motivating.
Yeah.
So many people when they hit like 50, they're like, nah,
I'm old.
that's it. I'm
Yeah.
like, holy man.
I
Like,
remember a buddy of mine probably about 10 years ago, he turned 30 and he's like, "Oh, it's all downhill from here, man. Like I feel it. I can feel the difference. I feel older now." And I was like, "You're 30, dude." Like there are at the time I was volunteering at the Big White After School Ski Program, and there
yeah,
was 2 dudes who were in their late 70s that volunteered for the after school program, and they skied, as many days of the year that you get out hunting, they skied as
right.
many days as they possibly could. Like they were up on the hill. They probably had like 120 days banked on the hill
Yeah,
skiing every
totally.
winter. And they were
Totally.
in their 70s. And I remember thinking, because it was at the exact same time that this buddy of mine said it to me, I'm like, okay, those guys are in their late 70s and they're still skiing. And you think
Yeah.
30 is old. You're going to have some issues by the time you hit
Yeah.
40.
I think by the time Like, I think the mental hit of that is like the biggest thing. You're like,
Yeah.
what are you
What
doing?
is
Are you
that?
like
Why do
just
people do
waiting?
that?
Are you just waiting to die? Like, is
Yeah.
that it? Or are you like, I don't know, man. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
There's a yeah, there's all sorts of cool studies and stuff like that to look at, like especially in a lot of the Scandinavian countries, they look at a lot
Mm,
of this stuff where there's like cross country skiing is quite a pastime, and they just
yeah.
will go out for like a 6 hour cross country ski, and they'll visit a few huts and they'll have a glass of wine and then they'll
Yeah.
head back, you know. And there's a
Yeah.
couple ladies up at I cross country ski a bit in the winter and up at the Kelowna Nordic Center,
Yeah.
just across the road from like up basically McCullough there.
Yeah.
Like there's a couple women up there, man, who are 65 plus who will wipe
Mhm.
the absolute trails with me like nobody's business. And then these other ladies that are just out there, they're out there cross country skiing, you're doing your cardio, you're working on your balance, a little bit of
Mhm.
strength, and they have little backpacks and they've got, a little hot chocolate, a little
Yeah.
wine, like whatever, right?
Yeah, make
And
it
they're just
worth it, man.
cruising around and they're like, this is great. Like imagine you're that or you're like sitting at the A&W like you see every other
Uh,
old person do. Come
yeah.
on.
I
Like
mean, I do aspire at one point to have that close-knit tight group of friends that when you're like 90, Saturday
I want
morning,
it
you're at
bad.
A&W all together having a chit chat about the week.
I want
I
it
do
bad
aspire
for
for that.
sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, so
But
sorry,
up
you got
until
off
that
topic there.
point, yeah.
Yeah. So activities, that's kind of what I'd say. Exercises,
Mm,
man, like I think people are probably looking for gym exercises here, but I'd say I think hiking with weight is probably one of the best things you can do as
mm,
far as all encompassing.
mm-hmm.
So I would probably, and you don't need to hike with 50 pounds all year. And I would try and vary the terrain, and I would try and vary the intensity, and I would try and vary all of those things because then you're
Mm-hmm.
training more than just one gear. I think I talked about that when you got me to when I came up with the BHNA squad when we connected earlier, is
Yeah.
like training multiple gears is important for the variability of the system that lies within us. So that's
Yeah.
important. So I would say rucking is important. And again, varied weight, varied time, varied intensity is probably the best way to do that. So that's one exercise. Second exercise, I'd probably say is like a trap bar deadlift. That's a
Mm,
pretty much it's very safe. You
yeah.
got to almost you almost got to try to hurt yourself with it because
Yeah.
it's more of a squatting motion and the weight's right underneath you.
Yeah.
So when it starts from the ground, it's kind of a good one. There's the high handle and low handle option, but I think
Yeah.
trap bar deadlift is probably like, I'd say it's probably like it's a game changer for
Mm,
some people,
okay.
creating core tension, upper back stiffness, all that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
then the last one I'd say is probably like a chest supported dumbbell row. Um, and that's again
Okay. Yeah.
horizontal pulling, like a
Yeah.
seal row, chest support, a seal row, something along those lines.
Yeah.
That's probably that, or it would also just be you could use the same trap bar and you could do a bent over row with the trap bar, just stand
Mm,
inside it.
yeah.
Now, the biggest reason for that and why I'm not saying bench press, overhead press, any of those things is because really like most of our life is in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say 98% of the problems that I'll see in clinic, whether it be neck, anywhere in the neck, anywhere in like the shoulder, even the elbow, sometimes the wrist, thoracic spine, and lumbar spine, somebody has pretty piss poor scapular control and
Mm,
strength of their mid back.
mm-hmm.
And I think there's just like a bigger amount. Like it's pretty easy to do push-ups, but it's not
Mm-hmm.
very easy to do, any sort of a heavy pulling exercise. So
Mm-hmm.
anyways, I think that's probably the three. I would say like a bent over row, whether that's a chest supported row, a trap bar row, barbell row, whatever, but a rowing variation like that you can load up, trap
Mm-hmm.
bar deadlift and rucking. I think that's probably like
Yeah. And those are totally accessible. Like
anyone,
anybody could do those. Yeah. You don't
anyone.
have to go to a gym. You could use
No.
equipment at home. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's totally accessible. That's
I
awesome.
think I think so. Like Bells of Steel has a fantastic trap bar and
Mm,
it's $300. And
yeah.
then if you just and you know what, gone are the days where weights are really expensive now. Like they're
Yeah.
back to what they were before. Like
Yeah.
Rocky Mountain Fitness here in Kelowna, they've got a sale on Hex dumbbells right now, $1.60 a pound. During
What?
$1.60 a pound for a rubber hex head dumbbell. Like you're not
That's
beating that.
cheap. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cheap.
Yeah.
Like,
And
but that's what they used to
if
be.
you can't afford the $1.60 a pound, like, Facebook Marketplace, man, people are selling them for $5 for a whole set.
Yeah, that, I mean, and also, like, honestly, just bags of sand, man. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's it. Like, I bags of sand, you have a couple different ones, and you have, like, a pack. Like, I've done a lot of videos and putting together some stuff for people back in the day that is, like, it's just that farm strength, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's buckets, it's
Yeah.
sand, it's rocks.
Yeah. The
It's
active living that we don't do anymore, that was just
right.
the norm every day before.
But I will say it's so grindy, like, it's uncomfortable and it's grindy. Um, it's like a lower barrier of entry, but
Mhm.
the mental toughness around it is harder, I would say. So, like, it's
Mhm.
sometimes just like, is the gym the end all be all? No, but there's a lot of benefits that come with it, right? And usually
Mhm.
just the accessibility of it. Like,
Yeah.
everything else hurts when you're like like if you've ever gone and done a lot of landscaping, you're like, holy shit, everything's
Yeah.
sore. My
Yeah.
hands are sore, my back is sore. Like,
Yeah.
always respect to the guys that are like, I used to
Oh,
work with
yeah.
guys landscaping and
Laboring.
logging and stuff who are freaking doing that stuff all day, every day, 40, 50 hours a week, plus
Yeah.
going to the gym 3 days a week. I'm like, good for you, man. Like,
Yeah.
that's
You are a
phenomenal.
well-rounded human. Yeah.
You
You
are
are
you
gonna live a
are
long time.
mentally you are mentally very tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Because most people are just like, I'm done. I'm giving up
Oh,
now.
yeah. Yeah, it's not a pretty industry, any of the labor industries, and you really do, the mental fortitude is there as well as obviously the physical strength to be able to
Yeah.
do those things.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think also just the constant, like, everything kind of hurts all the time.
Mhm.
People don't understand, I think, how much, like, that everything just hurts a little bit all the time. So there's a lot of
Yeah.
ways they could kind of slide out of, like, no, my knees do hurt a lot today. I'm not going to go to the gym. And you're
Yeah.
like, but a lot of the guys don't, man, and they just push through and they're in great shape, and sure, they may be a little banged up and so on and so forth, but, like, they're, like you said, like, they're probably going to live a pretty long, healthy, active life.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I wanna circle back around to the 73-year-old guy that you guided and
Yep.
maybe tap into that aspect of things. So, you are a guide with Arcadia Outfitters, and Ben has been on this podcast as well.
Cool.
So maybe touch on how that came to be. How did you end up in the guiding world?
Yeah. 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 I think in this. So when I kind of started, kind of like the mountain hunting thing in, like, 2019,
Mhm.
um, I didn't even. I knew what hunting guides were, and I knew a little of this and that, but, you know, I didn't. I was able to surround myself with people, like, who were big into conservation, like Pete Gutcha.
Yeah,
Then I was
Pete's
all
awesome.
able to. Yep. Then I was able to, Nolan Osborne.
Mhm.
He's a, multi-year sheep guide up at Terminus Outfitters right now.
Mhm.
Um, and then obviously Ben Storak, right, which is like, he's, I think, 2 years younger than me, so he's like 35, and then 34, 35, and he, has been doing this since he was 15 years old, basically,
Mhm.
and
Man, that guy has adversity down pat. Like
oh yeah,
he yeah.
tough to a fault is what I
Yeah,
usually
if
tell
if
him
you
to
haven't
his face.
listened to the podcast we did with Ben and to understand his whole story of how Arcadia Outfitters came to be, was basically decimated, and then somehow managed to survive, go back and listen to that episode
Yeah,
because his
yeah,
whole story is in there.
it's super cool. So Ben and I went for a hunt together, in Okanagan Mountain Park, actually,
Mm,
and it was an absolute shit day. We were bear hunting in the spring, and it was just garbage. And
mm,
so we got to, when usually the worse the hunting day, the more time you spend together, right? Like, there's
yeah,
just
yeah.
you're talking freely, like, more on, things like that. So we were talking a lot, and then we ended up doing a film. The second film I was in was called Wind in the Wolves, and
Mm.
that was at Arcadia. That was
Oh yeah.
2020,
Okay.
and it was like, uh, you know, Ben and I had chatted a little bit around that time, and then, um, yeah, it was like it was a fun film, and it was fun to hang out with Ben and Nolan and these, like, super legitimate guys who this was their profession, which I think made me take that hunting in general, like, quite a bit more seriously.
Mhm.
And then, yeah, and that was like, I did a fly-in hunt that year as well, which was fantastic. So I kind of went,
Wow.
like, right away. I was just
Where'd
like,
you
let's.
fly into?
I flew out of Dees Lake,
Mm,
so,
okay.
and then, yeah, so I did up there a pocket full of tags hunt, moose, goat, caribou, sheep,
Yeah.
which was fantastic, super successful hunt.
Nice.
And then I was like hooked. I was like, yeah, like, I don't want to do anything else. Like, I just want to do big adventure backcountry hunts forever. Like, that's it
Mhm.
for sure. And then these
Yeah.
guys, I see them, like, I'm like, man, this is like a real job. Like you do this, and
Somebody
there's a
pays you
lot
for
like
this? Yeah.
there's a human element to it that's pretty tough though, right? Like
Yeah.
you still have to understand who you're with, their limitations.
Well,
You
and the
know,
expectations. Like I
totally.
look at what Ben does, what you're doing, what all the guides that I have met and know are doing, and I just think, man, I don't know. I have enough pressure on myself when I'm hunting on my own to try and find something, let alone somebody who's invested many, many dollars
Yep.
for a result. Like
Yep.
there's obviously no 100% guarantee, but
Yep.
you don't have a successful guide outfitting business if you don't at least deliver results every once in a while to your clientele, right?
Sure.
So there's a
Definitely.
lot
Yeah.
of pressure
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, for sure. So it's always been interesting. So anyway, just going down that road. I didn't even know anything about it really. Like I knew what they were, but I didn't know the ins and outs of it. And then it was always interesting because I would they're all talking about the same outfits and the same names and like all these guys, and I'm like, it feels like I'm part of this. I'm like on the outer fringes of this club, this like
Mm,
elite club kind of thing. So I was like, this is like super cool, and I want to maybe spend some time getting to figure out, you know, I wish I could maybe do this at some point in time,
yeah.
and then and then I just spend a lot of time looking at sheep, and I think Ben liked my work ethic. I've always kind of tried to talk the talk and but also back it up with the walk, right?
Yeah.
And then so came out and helped on some sheep hunts with Ben at Arcadia, and then invited me back for another year doing that. And then
Nice.
from there, just more. He's like, hey, you think you want to kind of build mule deer and start somewhere. So I
Mhm.
started guiding some mule deer, and then
Nice.
and then we'll see what happens from there. I think ultimately my goal, I'd like to be able to take, between 4 and 6 weeks off work and go guide up north.
Cool. Yeah.
Something along those lines. But I'm also, I love Ben dearly. He's one of my best friends, and he's actually he just it'll be finalized in November, but is basically he's purchasing another outfit up in the
Oh,
north,
cool.
which is really cool. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'll leave the details for that, but all
Yeah.
things look to be it's just like kind of it's all done. Just some signing of documents at in about a month or so.
Well, there goes your dreams are coming true, man. Ben's gonna buy another
It.
outfitter and you'll be able to guide
It.
up north.
That's it. So yeah, we'll
Yeah.
see how that works. But he'll also need some guys he can trust with his outfit down here, right? So
Yeah, true.
so I might end up. So next year, I think the plan is I'll probably put before 5 or 6 weeks in, guiding at Arcadia with
Nice.
for mule deer, and then he'll be back and we'll do sheep together.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, people can go and listen to the interview I did with Ben, but for the folks that are listening to this one, maybe just a quick Coles Notes. What does Arcadia offer as an outfitter? What's your guys' main species that you're guiding on?
Probably the big California bighorn sheep. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's like probably the thing.
Yeah.
100% success rate.
Wow.
We always look for the biggest, oldest creature we can find. That's obviously legal.
Hmm.
It's an interesting hunt. It's like we get them knocked out pretty quick.
Yeah.
But it's all I'm there for days finding them and looking at them and
Hmm.
doing all sorts of stuff. So
Yeah.
it's a fun hunt. It's
I don't
high
know if
pressure, man.
fun's the word.
Yeah, it's
It's
high
tough
pressure.
and it's rewarding, but I don't
Yeah,
know if fun.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I guess
fun.
it's fun. It's fun.
It's fun. Yeah, it's type 2. It's just fun later.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
I love it, man. I love sheep. They're my favorite thing, by far.
Okay, yeah.
Alpine.
That was gonna be a next question.
Yeah, yeah,
Sheep,
sheep in
okay.
general. I love looking at them. I love what they represent. I love where they
Mhm.
live, and the challenge and the reward of hunting them. And I think there's I just like being out there and looking at them, whether I'm looking at 20 lambs and ewes or I'm looking at a bunch of big rams or whatever I'm looking at. I'm just happy to be out there. They definitely feel different when I look at that. When I look at a bunch of does in a field or a bunch of does in the bush or something like that. It's just
Yeah.
not the same for me.
Yeah.
I know guys. I love hunting alpine mule deer. That's You want to
Mm.
talk about a grind. That's definitely a
Yeah.
terrible, awful hunt.
Yeah.
um, but that's it. And then I think after bighorns, wicked, some wicked bears in that area too. So that's pretty
Mm.
good. And then for a while there, we'll have to see what happens. Used to be crazy good with big cats, but the
Mm.
fire kind of pushed a lot of that stuff out because that whole area is all burnt up. So yeah,
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
some cool stuff there for sure.
There's a
But yeah,
lot of cats this year. I was chatting with a friend who's part of the Summerland range that I'm a part of, and he was saying on his cameras he's seen a ton of cats this year. So I don't
yeah,
know if they just have had a prolific year for babies or if they are just happen to be more in these lower areas and more active.
I think there's just a lot. I think there's honestly, I think there's a lot of cats a lot of time. You just don't see them that often.
Don't tell me that, man. I do a lot of hunting on my own, and I'm like, yeah, there's no cats out here. The chances of me running into a cat are pretty damn slim. And then
I
I
think,
chat with a few buddies who have cameras out there because I don't run cameras yet,
yeah,
and they're like, oh no, I've seen tons of cats, and they're all kind of in
oh
the
yeah,
area where I roughly am. And I'm like, oh yeah,
yeah.
that's great.
Because there's animals in that area. It's good. You want to be where hunters are, right? And
Yeah, yeah,
cats
yeah,
are hunters. The
yeah. That's
best,
right.
probably.
Yeah, as long
Yeah,
as they're not hunting me, we'll be fine.
yeah. They honestly like, yeah. I mean, it'd have to be such bad luck. It's almost good luck, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
you'd have to
Depending
come
on which
across
perspective you look
a
at, for sure.
starving, hungry juvenile cat or one that's like super mucked up and injured or like about to die
Yeah,
and because of like old age and starvation that
yeah,
it's like willing to take on a human. Like,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. There was a
yeah.
cat kill that we saw this year at Ben's place that was pretty sad. It was just like a beautiful ram that I've seen for a little bit. And he's
Mm.
like an 11-year-old California bighorn and got murked by a cat. It was pretty sad. I didn't
Oh,
watch it happen, but this the
the
could see the
aftermath.
could see the carcass of it through my
Oh,
spotting
wow.
scope, and I'm like, these fucking cats. So
I mean, they gotta eat too, right? They're
they
part of
do.
the ecosystem, so
They do. It's
yeah.
just part of it, man. Yeah, it's just part of it, and then burns usually make that a little bit more interesting too. They can see, it
Yeah.
helps. Like burns help. Uh, they don't help cats. They help the things they try and eat because there's way better sight lines
Mm.
versus like you get that thick, dense forest.
Yeah, and a
Uh,
cat could be hiding.
Cats are just such good hunters. So like
Yeah.
even the park here, like where I spend some good time hiking around in Okanagan Mountain Park. Like, it's getting way more dense. Like, it
Oh,
almost
yeah.
needs to burn again. I know it's an
Oh,
unpopular
it does.
opinion here, but
Oh,
it's
no, it
just
has to happen. Jesse Zeman and I were chatting the other day. For those that aren't familiar, Jesse is the executive director for the BC Wildlife Federation. He and I were having a chat the other day. He came out and did an educational hike tour for the Backcountry Hunters and Anglers chapter here in Region 8. And he
cool.
was saying, we went through Okanagan Mountain Park and he was looking around. And he said, see how thick it is? This is exactly the conditions that become ripe for wildfire. And it's
Totally.
been more than 20 years now since we had that massive fire go through OK Mountain Park. And so, it's unfortunately, if we don't do controlled burns, we will have out of control burns eventually. Like it's
Yep.
just the nature of it.
Totally. Yep. And if
Yeah.
you wanna keep building further and further nice houses into the forest, I
Hmm.
mean, it is what it is,
Yeah.
Like, it's like,
It's an
how dare
unpopular
these.
opinion because there's always the risk that a controlled burn becomes an uncontrolled burn, but at least you're prepared then versus holy shit, there's an uncontrolled burn. We weren't prepared for it. Nobody's ready. And all of a sudden
Right.
houses are at risk and the forest is burning versus, okay, we're doing this in a controlled manner. We have set up parameters. We are aware of the risk that this could potentially move towards these homes, and we've taken the proper precautions. So
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
100% on board for controlled burning.
especially when you look at the park in the spring and it's,
Yeah.
like, starting to green up at the bottom and on,
Hmm.
like, south-facing slopes, and then the top is still snow-covered
Hmm.
where there's not that much fuel anyways, and
Yeah.
there's this whole mid-region, and you're like, it's got a natural barrier point at this point anyways.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
the wind always pushes up the lake, so just, like, push it that way, and you
Yep.
have a whole retardant block on the one side, like, at the Vide or something like that,
Hmm.
and then you have,
Yeah.
I don't know, like, I'm definitely no expert, but
No, but it comes
it
down to
seems like
resources ultimately, I guess, and
budget
and
allocation from the
unpopular
province.
public
Yeah.
opinion.
Budget allocation from the province, right? Like, that's always
Yeah.
an interesting one. That's a whole different podcast, so
Yeah. Yeah, that's a rant. That's a rant that
yeah,
I could go on for a long time.
big time.
Um, okay, so That kind of covers off a few of the base areas that I wanted to touch on as far as mountain fitness, your focus on that, where people can find more resources,
Yeah.
your involvement with Beyond the Kill, and your own podcast where people, again, can find that resource of information where they can connect with you. And if they want to see you, they can obviously find you
Yeah.
through that and connect for in-person
Yeah.
appointments. But it sounds like there will also be some in-person opportunities for group uh, education and information coming up.
Yeah.
And then that last part was touching on Arcadia and the Outfitters and what that is like. But I still have a few questions from our audience that they wanted answered. So one of
If
them
it's
is,
if it's cool, I'll jump in and just say
yep.
probably the next thing that people should think about doing at the kind of coming in coming into like peak mule deer rut and then a little bit of
Mm,
whitetail time.
yeah.
And like people always ask me like, what should I be doing now? And it really is like I'd probably be doing the same things that you're doing, but
Hmm.
I would be critical of your performance in the backcountry this year. Was I not strong enough to carry a heavy pack? But it felt
Mm,
like, did I not recover well enough? I could carry a heavy pack, but I didn't recover well enough. My
hmm.
right Achilles hurt the entire time I was out there. I
Hmm.
constantly had pain on the inside of my knee. My back hurt. Because sometimes people like, you're like, oh yeah, you finish hunting season up and it's like almost December and you're like, oh, and then you're into Christmas and
Yeah,
then
you
it's
just forget,
January.
right?
And
The pain
you're
that was
like, I
there
don't
in the
know, like
moment. You're like, I
you're
can't
like,
remember
oh
what
yeah,
that
like
was.
right. Yeah. So I just, I always think
Yeah,
like
good point.
make some lists of some and be critical, right? Like
Mm,
most of us are pretty critical about our gear.
yeah,
That leaked. That did this. That
yeah,
didn't work. Versus
yeah,
like our bodies were like, I don't know. Like it kind of
yeah,
like that's probably the best piece of gear that you could kind of work on that
yeah,
that costs probably very little compared to like, new rain gear.
yeah, yeah,
um, you need both, but just saying.
yeah.
And so
No,
I would
that's a
just say
great point.
be critical about that stuff. And then in this off season, start to work on like your first thing back is going to be probably getting back into some sort of a routine where you're working on your mobility, you're working on your
Hmm.
hips, you're working on your thoracic spine, you're maybe going to get some massage time done, you're going to see the physio, the chiro, whatever you're going to do, but you're going to put a little bit of time into the performance machine that you've asked to work from, whatever, September to November or
Hmm.
December, and try and figure out what else is going on with that and then start to make that plan now
Hmm.
versus January, all
Yeah.
February, all March shit. It's like kind of, it's still kind of cold. April, you're like, all right, well, May. And then you're like, well,
Oh, it's
June,
summer.
June, yeah, June, July. And then I'm sheep hunting anyways. And then it's like, people message me every year.
Yeah.
I've done nothing. I go sheep hunting in two
What can I do
weeks.
now? Yeah.
What do you think I should do for 2 weeks? I'm like, I don't know, fucking
Rewind time and and start
pray.
this conversation earlier. Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, I think that's something that I usually try and slip in, especially this time of year, because I've already started to get a couple of DMs just asking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's
So
a
sorry.
really good point, especially because it's so fleeting, right? Like
Oh
if
yeah,
you are out there hunting and you're wandering around and you do have that minor dull ache or that pain or that sharp thing, whatever that goes away when you're back at your office job or doing whatever, it's
yep,
so easy to just forget that that was a thing that will probably be a thing again in the future if you don't take care of it before the
yeah,
season starts.
yeah,
Yeah, great
absolutely.
point.
So yeah, that's what I think. So sorry, some listener questions. I'm
Yeah,
always
yeah,
excited
no,
about
that's
these.
good. Listener question number one. What is your dream hunt and why?
Oh
I should have given these to you beforehand so you could really
man, no,
percolate on
this
it.
is perfect. This is perfect. Yeah, dream hunt is probably. I would say it's probably like a combo hunt, um, with like one of my best friends. Probably in something like the Yukon where I could go like Doll, sheep, caribou, moose, grizzly bear. That's probably
Mm,
like up there as far as like anything. That's probably what I would do. But as
yeah,
far as hunts that I'm realistically looking at myself,
yeah.
that obviously we're very lucky here in BC and hopefully continue to will be lucky so we can keep sheep hunting if we keep
Mhm.
making better choices. But I'll leave that alone for there. Um, but I think I would really like to hunt brown bear with the bow in Alaska.
Mm,
That's like pretty high on the list. And then I would also love to hunt. I would love to hunt ibex in like Tajikistan, but I think there's a pretty good
Mm,
Taliban problem over there from what I've looked
yeah,
into.
maybe
So I
not the best
don't,
place to
I,
go.
I don't know if TJ's still. I'm not 100% sure. Somebody might know more than me there. I'm not
Yeah.
sure if they're hunting it much right now, but I know
Mm.
in you can still go to Kyrgyzstan and hunt ibex. So I'd be
Wow.
pretty keen on hunting ibex there. And then I'm also pretty keen to. I'd like to do and not a shitty canned hunt, but I would like to hunt like the Black Death, the water buffalo with a bow as well. Those are
Oh,
probably the
wow.
big ones. Yeah.
And you're
Those are,
mostly a bow hunter, right?
yeah, a bit of both, but I do enjoy getting in close and blowing a lot of stuff out. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I just started bow hunting this year. My moose hunt was a bow hunt, and I until you start bow hunting, you don't really appreciate the extra level that you have to go to as a hunter to be able to get that close to an animal to be able to harvest it.
Yep.
Because there's such a false sense of security when you're rifle hunting where you see something 150 yards away and you think, or 200, 250, 300 yards away and you think, ah, yeah, that's in range, that's reachable. And then when you're
Totally.
with the bow, especially as a new bow hunter, I'm like, 20 yards, man, I got to get within 20 yards spitting distance of this animal before I can harvest
Yeah.
it, and it has to stay there long enough for me to be able to process and do all of that.
It's
So it's
it's
very,
unbelievably
yeah,
challenging.
it's next
Yeah.
level
Yeah.
for sure.
And I think if or even take the scope off your gun, right, and hunt iron sights, like that's
Yeah,
kind of that same
jeez.
thing. Like
Yeah,
I like that as well. Iron
yeah.
sights, bow hunting, you won't be as successful,
Nope.
especially if you target mature animals, if you're not just out
Mhm.
to shoot anything.
Yeah.
Um,
I always
but
start with the idea of mature animals, and then by like, day 7 of my hunt, I'm like, if anything shootable walks in front of me, it is gonna be harvested. And of course that didn't happen, but it
now
always starts out with the best of intention.
you gotta stick with it. You
I
gotta stick
know.
with it, or
I
just
know.
go out and be like, I'll kill anything.
Yeah.
I got buddies that are like that I rip on all the time.
Yeah.
Full, coming back, they're going up north, cow elk, doesn't matter. Like they're
Yeah,
just
yeah.
like they want to kill big stuff, but they're like,
Yeah.
I don't care. Like it just anything steps in front of me, I'm shooting it
Yeah.
if it's legal. So I
Yeah.
mean,
You have to
it
it has to be, what is your intention for hunting? So my intention for hunting is to harvest edible food. It's for food. So there's a portion of me that gets caught up in the ego of like, oh, but wouldn't it be cool if I had this massive harvest to be able to show? And then it's like, okay, if the idea is food, then truly any legal animal should be just as good. Um, so
yeah,
I kind of have found my middle ground of, I'm not I am mostly hunting deer at this point.
yeah.
So I'm not into hunting for spikers or forkies, although I wouldn't necessarily pass on a forky at the end of the season. But I ideally would like to harvest more mature animals
Yep.
to still help give some opportunity for those young ones to grow up into something else. But
Yep.
at the end of the season, that starts to shift.
as it does with for so many people too, right? You're just
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's tough, man. Especially, yeah, but good thing is end of the season, right? Like like bigger bucks and better bucks do come down out of the
They
areas that are
do.
harder to hunt. So
Yeah.
like, I think a lot of people kind of start off that like, any buck season, right? Or it's 4 point
Hmm.
season and then it's into any buck, which I don't even think we should have, but that's another
Yeah.
story. And then you're kind of out and you're like, but man, like really it's not going to get good until November. Like you're going to
Yeah.
be able, if you hold out and you put
Yeah.
all your time into November, you're going to kill good mule deer. Like you
Yeah.
can do it. Like,
Everything that I
but
have seen that's shootable in the last 2 years that I've been hunting, everything that I've seen that has been shootable and good has been in basically in November. I think I've seen maybe one shootable buck outside of November, but it's
yeah.
just, yep, days
And
in
that's,
field, and eventually you'll run across some poor
yep.
guy who walked out in the wrong
And they,
spot of the woods.
and they also like, they man, when you're trying to find mature mule deer, man, they for the most part they stay in areas where you're not going to be very successful trying to hunt them for the most part.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you got to go up high, you got to look in the timber, you got to be out at
Hmm.
first light, last light, like you got to hunt hard and long,
Yeah.
and it's tough. It's tough. So then you get a little bit of a break because you get like the rut starting, and they want to come down and find some does to pull out,
Yeah.
and then that's when
Yeah.
you got to get them.
I still have this delusion because I'm a new hunter and I've only been doing this will be my third season that we're in right now. I still have this delusion when everyone's like, oh, the rut. And they say the rut. And like in cartoon fashion in my brain, there's deer everywhere. Everywhere you walk in the woods, there's deer. And that's what I think of every time people say the rut. They're like, yeah, but when the rut comes, then you can get a deer. I'm like, awesome. There'll be 40 of them the next time I drive out into the woods. And then I go out there, I'm like,
No.
oh, right. Yeah, it's not quite that cartoon perfect.
Yeah, still a wild animal. Damn it.
Still a wild animal, still hundreds of acres of woods for them to be in. So it's not like they suddenly concentrate right where I happen to hunt.
No.
No,
I
unfortunately, it
think
doesn't work that way.
that's like the classic elk thing too, is you're like, I'm like, cool, here they are in July, or here they are in June, here they
Yeah.
are in July, here they are in August. Wow, I can't find them at the end of August. Oh my God, they're not there in September.
They've
Fuck.
all gone. They're died.
No,
They've gone to heaven.
no,
They've
no,
exited
no.
the woods.
Man, so bad. Or you
Yeah.
like go back into your spot and that you've like put in time and you're like, oh yeah. And there's tons of elk sign in there, but it was from like late season, like
Yeah.
after the season.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh shit. Cause you go in there and like in the end of August and you're like, all right, bow season's coming up. And then you look on the ground and there's like none of the water that you hoped was there. And you're like, well, this is going to be a bust.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. It's a passion of persistence, I guess. And you have to be persistent.
Big time.
Okay,
So yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
dream hunts, that's probably it. But if I could do anything, it'd probably be like I think the only place you can still do it's the Yukon to do like doll, moose, caribou, and grizzly bear. Yeah. And it would probably be like I'd probably want to do a float for most of those.
Yeah. Well, if it's the dream hunt, you might as well.
Alpaca raft, I think. Yeah.
That would be cool. Okay, next question was, what advice would you give on planning food and hydration for a 5 or more day backpack hunt?
Yeah, 5 or more days probably isn't too hard, but it's always funny because a 3-day hunt, you're probably in most places, you're probably bringing the same amount of shit as you are for a 14-day hunt. It just your food changes, right? So it's always tough. So you got your whole system kind of figured out, your tent, your stove, all that crap. And then really, your water, you're obviously going to pack in like a couple of liters, depending on where you go. If you have water everywhere, then whatever, maybe you don't. But as far as hydration is concerned, it really depends on time of year. If you're going out early, you got to know that you're going to need way more salt and way more water than if you would, like, especially, in like, God, it can be 30 degrees in August when you're trying to hunt. And everybody knows that. It can be 30 degrees in August when you're trying to hunt sheep and elk, and whatever else you're getting after. It can be brutal. Like, if you're just truly backpack hunting and you don't have a base camp, like with a bunch of water at the quad or tent or whatever setup you're running, it can be detrimental, like savagely detrimental to your hunt. So planning that out, obviously that kind of matters, but like I would kind of plan on being able to have like probably, between 3 and 5 liters of water a day, depending on how many coffees you want to drink, how much food, let's peak meals, peak refuel tastes better and Alpenfuel tastes better than most of the other freeze-dried meals, but they also use by far the least amount of water. And when you're like running shy on water, you're like, oh man, this is like, if you have kind of rationed a liter of water a day and, then the rest is going to be in your boil bag and for a coffee, like, man, that is what's going to happen in 5 days. You can push through in 5 days, but really you can't if you're out there for 10, right?
Yeah.
Like, you will cramp, you will break down. Like, that's just
kind
of part of it.
Do you ever, if you're going on a 5-day hunt, do you ever go and I guess it would depend on if you're hunting out of a base camp or not, but say you were doing not a base camp, or you're doing a progressive hunt where you're going further into a place. Do you ever go before your hunt and place water as sort of checkpoint stops?
I haven't, but I just haven't hunted in a situation like that before. That either there's water along the way, and if there isn't, I'm not usually going to be in there. I can usually pack in enough to get to the next thing, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So no, I haven't done that, but I mean, yeah, like in the States, you can cache so much stuff, ranger cabins and all sorts of different things. That'd be pretty slick. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, I've never done that. And then food, really for 5 days, it's probably not gonna matter like too much. Um, you can like that's right on the cusp of like you don't even really need to eat much, like as long as you have
Hmm.
some, like a boil bag and a couple other things a day, like you might be hungry, but you'll be okay. But if
Yeah.
you're going more than that and you're going 14 days backpacking or something, I think the number one thing that people need to remember is that you actually have to eat it. Like most people I'm with who create, and I've done this, all right, I'm going to have like my 60 grams of protein with carbohydrates and some fat in the morning. And then
Hmm.
I'm going to have my carb snacks throughout the day and then a fatty lunch. And then my like boil bag at night. I'm going to like measure out my macros. And really, it's just calories
Hmm.
and actually eating it.
Yeah.
Because number one thing for most people, one, you're fucking packing it. So eat it.
Yeah.
So, and if you don't like the food, when you don't really like it before you're on the trip, you're not going to like it when you're on the trip
No.
because it's
No.
terrible.
Yeah.
So like I'll have some guys be like, "Oh man, that's like way too many carbs and there's not enough of this, this and this." And I'm like, "These are usually guys who've like never done more than 3 or 4 days."
Hmm.
Usually. Or they like, or it's they can come out and they can go to a Denny's and then they can go
Yeah.
back in or something like that, right? Like, I
Yeah.
don't know. It's you need to be able to eat the food you bring. And it sounds
Yeah.
simple, but it's like when you're looking at Cliff Bars for, day 13
I try, man. I really,
and it's
really try. I have them. They're in my bag is like if I'm dying or I'm stuck on a cliff somewhere and
sure.
that's what they're called. They're Cliff Bars. And I'm like, it's an emergency ration, but do I
Yeah.
enjoy eating them? No. And I know some people love them. They just live off of them, but I cannot. I
I
have to enjoy it.
I honestly like they're pretty indifferent to me. I can eat them quite quickly. And that to me is
Mm, I
like I
can't.
as
That's the thing.
long as
Maybe it's 'cause I'm too slow.
I can just mash them down, and I mean, I've eaten I couldn't tell you how many I've eaten. Like, I used to
Yeah.
eat them I used to eat so many of those, like, wildland forest firefighting and,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
years, mountain biking and doing all the things before that, like,
Yeah.
I
Probably
can
enough to get
still
sponsored by them. Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding. But, I mean, I honestly, like, and then the other thing is, like, what if I don't have much water? If I have lots of
Mm,
water, you can kinda get anything back, like and you
yeah.
can bring electrolyte mixes and all that kinda stuff, but honestly, what if I'm, like, really short on water and I really have to ration it and I still need to get some calories and stuff in? So I usually have the
Hmm.
Cool Mint ones, the cool chocolate mint ones. I
Yeah.
find them,
Those
like,
ones are good.
decently refreshing enough versus, like, almond fudge peanut butter, and it's 20 degrees and you don't have much water. You're like, "Holy shit,
Your
man."
mouth
Like, I
is
don't
just
think I can do
chalk
it.
afterwards.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think I can do it. So, yeah, I think for food, the number one thing I'd say is, like, don't worry too much on what's in there. You can dial it in. Just
Mhm.
more time in the field will show you what you want to eat and what you don't wanna eat. I will say one
Mhm.
of the best hacks that I have kinda developed and I stole from Ben is, just for some calories is just I bring powdered bone broth into the field now, and
Mm.
it's pretty good, but
Oh,
also that's
yeah.
actually kind of expensive. And honestly, one of the cheaper options that I really enjoy is just the Lipton, packets of soup.
Yeah.
It's like a shitty chicken noodle soup, but it's
Yeah.
salt. I
Yeah.
mean, it's nice to have a hot beverage at the end of
Mm.
in the
Mhm.
end of the day, and you don't wanna have a coffee or something.
Yeah.
And there's like, there's some calories and there's some salt in it too. So it's pretty nice and it's like quite
That's good.
comforting. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
so it's nice.
That's awesome.
But yeah, apart from that, I just say like make sure it's the things you want to eat. And then as far as hydration's concerned, like if you're talking how much everybody's going to be, dependent, are you hiking in?
Yeah.
Is it really hot? Are you just glassing from the tops of ridges and you're not really doing much?
Mhm.
But the other one I'd say is that anytime you get a rainstorm and you're out there, I mean, set that tarp up and collect as much water as you can.
Mhm.
And just like use every element possible. It's it's always nice to be able to be like, nice, we're going from here to there, and I know I can see there's a water source there because I've seen it glistening from 5K away in the sun.
Mhm.
Nice, I'm gonna dump out all this water right here. Like that's a
Yeah.
nice one to have versus looking at that water source being like, oh my God, I need to get there now because I haven't had a drink of water for days.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
rough.
Definitely some planning involved
Yeah,
in that.
for sure.
This is maybe a side tangent question to that, but I guess depending on what hunt you're on, and I mean, I don't know what your take is on the background of this, but you're kind of like intermittent fasting in between your days there, right? Unless you're really needing to pack on um, calories and food into it. Because like if you're if you're not doing an intensive hunt, if a lot of your hunting is just glassing or sitting, you probably don't need to pack as much food if you have the ability or capacity to not
Yep.
have to eat as much.
Yep, totally. I think also with intermittent fasting, right, when you look at it, it's that you're just eating in a shorter window, but you're eating the
Yeah.
same amount of calories. It's not truly reduced caloric like kind of intake.
Intake. Yeah.
So, like, yeah, if you don't, it's and I always tell people, I'm like, you should work out, you should learn how to work out fasted, right? You should not
Mhm.
be so food dependent if you want to spend a lot of time in the backcountry.
Yeah.
Like
Totally.
you sometimes just can't be like,
Mhm.
I will start my day. I try and have a coffee, a couple cigarettes. No, and then, and
A
then,
little thing
you
of
know,
bourbon.
have a 100% have a coffee, and maybe you're going to have breakfast at that time, or maybe if you're able to glass and set up from where you are, then maybe you can have breakfast a little bit later. If you know you're
Mhm.
going to be doing a big journey and moving through country, I'd say eat in the morning just so you get those calories in, because there
Mhm.
never seems to be a time where you're like, "Oh, I want to stop now." Like, now we're
Yeah.
moving, now
No.
we're going. But otherwise, I'm always a big fan. Like, for the longest time, I freaking, you know, bar in the morning with a coffee,
Mhm.
maybe another bar mid-morning,
Yeah.
Ichiban and some pepperoni or something for lunch, and then or whatever thing, because there's bang for buck and calories,
Oh,
you're
yeah.
not beating it as far as
Yeah.
weight. And then, um, and then at night, it's just like, cool, boil bag, like whatever one you
Mhm.
have, every other bar,
Yeah.
chocolate bar that night, nuts. You're like having like 2,000 calories of your 2,600 calorie day at
Yeah.
night, you know? And
Yeah.
I mean, I've done that a lot.
I know it's a really impractical one to bring because it's only good for a day or so, but I do a lot of just day hunting out from where I live to be able to
Yeah.
just get out at least every day if I can. Pepperoni and cheese is like my absolute favorite,
Oh, I bring that
like
on like 14-day
mid
hunts.
hunt snack, and it still lasts. If you get a hard cheese, it'll last you for 2-3 days. So at least for your first few days, you can have
Oh,
it
I
without
I
having to
bring
worry about it.
I bring cheese on like 14-day hunts. Just leave it in the
Oh
bag.
yeah, you can get the little packaged ones. I just buy like a big block and I cut it up as I'm
Yeah,
going. But yeah, you
I
can
don't.
buy packaged cheese.
I just bring it out there with me. I don't buy the packaged cheese.
Yeah.
It's just whatever, a little mold on the outside, you just kinda
Yeah,
carve it
cut it
off. It's
off.
all
Yeah.
good. Yeah, or I eat it, doesn't matter to me.
Yeah,
But yeah,
whatever. It's
pepperoni, all
good.
that stuff lasts forever, you know?
Yeah,
So,
pepperoni and cheese
yeah,
is like my all-time favorite. And it's just yeah,
there's
like it fills you up. It's got good fats. It's like
yeah,
long, slow burning fuel. It feels good. Yeah.
100%.
And
The
it's
satiety
salty,
level
so
is super high, right? Like, and
yeah.
that's super important versus when you're just eating 5-cent candies, you're just like, "Ah, that's a nice little sugar rush,"
Also
and then
have
you're
those in
like,
my pocket. Yeah.
always, right? But then, you eat those and you're like 6 seconds later, you're like, "Damn, I'm
Yeah.
hangry again," you know?
Yeah, good insulin spike for sure.
Yep.
Okay, next question. Favorite piece of new gear this season?
Favorite piece of new gear. This is always like this is always I think the gear gets smaller and smaller. Like the the pieces get stranger and stranger, to be
Yeah.
honest, as like time goes on, It's like, because in the beginning you're like, "Oh, I really enjoyed this," or "Oh, I really enjoyed this," or you're like, "Oh, my Swarovski spotting scope was like that was a big game changer." Good binos.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, I think the number one piece of equipment that I really enjoyed this year, um, God,
It's gonna be your new pair of underwear, isn't it? Or pair of
it's
socks.
nah, it's all sorts of random stuff. Like, I mean, I really enjoyed, like, I bought a new solar panel this year, like a
Oh,
3-sheet solar panel from Anchor.
yeah, yeah.
That was fantastic. I was
Cool.
super happy with how it worked. It
That
was
is
great.
actually really important. Yeah. I have the constant problem of my phone and my
Yeah,
devices dying in the field. And I have like one of those little pocket solar charge things,
yeah,
but honestly, it's good for like one charge and then it's dead. And the
yeah.
solar does not charge it.
Yep. No, exactly. So yeah, I have a solar panel and then a brick, and I think that's like the 3-sheet solar panel is really good this
Mm.
year. And then I think the other piece of gear that I really liked, it's just like I said, it's kind of weird stuff. Um, the the Sitka scent glove was like really
Mm.
nice to wear this year, and
Okay.
that was like, I mean, it's not super exciting, but Yeah.
You know what? If people want Sitka gear, I just saw Adam Foss posted he's got a discount code. So if somebody wants to go get that glove, they can probably get it with a discount right now.
It's a good, yeah, good glove. Yeah. And then I mean, I did have some cool other piece of gear. Like I had a new rifle this year as well, 300 PRC from Fierce with a VX5 HD scope. Like I was shooting that a
Nice.
lot. That's a great gun.
Yeah.
But like that kind of stuff. But honestly, like it's the little things that I feel like
Yeah.
make. Here's one that I'm gonna have next year that people will laugh their bag off for sure. I'm
Hit me.
bringing an umbrella on my next bunch of mountain hunts.
An umbrella. Why?
Ultralight
For when you're
umbrella.
spotting?
Yep. Ultralight
Wow.
umbrella. It's fantastic.
How are you,
Ben,
you know, like, is it going to tether to your spotting scope or what?
I just hold it. Like,
Okay.
because you're not
Okay.
using your eyes. I don't use my hands with my spotting scope. I just push it
Yeah.
around my face. Yeah.
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 That's fair.
Ben pulled it out. Ben pulled it out in the Northwest Territories this year. And I was like, oh, man,
Jealous.
that's awesome. And he's like, oh, yeah. He's
That's
like, this is great.
hilarious.
Sun's just beating down. You don't really want to set up a
Mm.
tarp. He just pops that thing up.
Yeah,
Sits
that's smart. I
under
didn't
it,
even think about
spawning.
that. Yeah.
I'm
On
like,
the sunny days too.
oh,
Yeah.
to me, it's more sun. Like rain, I'll set up a tarp because you're usually there for longer and whatever. But
Yeah.
sun, it's just sometimes it's just as crippling. It feels like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, cheap hunting. Bring an umbrella.
That's awesome. I'm sure there's got to be one of the like hunting companies that has like a camo branded super cheap umbrella. Somebody has to have it.
Helinox ultralight umbrella. Pretty dope.
Mm. The next question was, and you kind of touched on this a little bit, but what are the plans for Hard Yards podcast and Beyond the Kill for future? Which I think, yeah, you kind of probably touched on that at the beginning as far as your plans for 2024.
Yeah. So I think a lot more stuff, like video stuff coming out online from me. And then we'll probably still have that related to a Patreon site. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep going with that, but we'll go from there. And then, just stuff online that people can follow along with. And just, I always am like interested in what people have to say. So reach out DMs, especially things that you want me to cover, problems that you got going on. And then, like I said, look for more in-person events as these things kind of take place. And cool. Then, And then as far as Beyond the Kill stuff, I mean, I think standard ops, podcast world and that sort of thing. So, apart from that, but that's it. I know there's a lot of, the industry's tough, man. The industry's tough. It's a tough industry. There's a lot out there right now. Advertising's a lot different.
You really have to niche down and know your market.
There's a lot of stuff, and to me, it's nice because it's not, it's not how I make a living. I'm very happy and I'm passionate about helping mountain hunters and mountain backcountry athletes kind of achieve either a pain-free hunt or get back to it or hunt harder and faster and longer, right? So whatever that is for me, that I'm super happy just to keep doing that, and giving that information out as widely spread and as freely as possible. And then if you want the in-person events, I think we can really dive into some of that stuff. And I'll probably do some like paid in-person events this year is what I'm hoping.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Last listener question, and then I've got some closing rapid fire questions. But the question from our last listener was, how was your experience caribou hunting this year?
All up in Northwest Territories. Yeah. I mean, that was, a lot of bucket list stuff happened there. I got married. That was pretty wild.
Hunting?
Yep.
Did you actually?
Yeah.
That's awesome. I didn't realize that.
No, my wife came up there with me, and we went out into Arctic Reds territory, and then Ben was our officiant. And
did he have to get it specially so he could do that? Like, did he go and get that just for your wedding?
We signed the papers beforehand and all that sort of stuff, just like you do when you go to Mexico, that sort of thing. But so that stuff was fantastic. So went up there. I mean, the pictures are on my Instagram and stuff like that. But
I saw those. I didn't realize, my brain just didn't connect that it was happening at the same time as that hunt.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yep. So up there did that, and then 14 days of backpack caribou hunting, and then I was I was Ben's guide for Doll Sheep actually up there, but but didn't quite find what we were looking for. But we found him an absolute giant caribou, which is so well deserving for all the work that he's always put in for guiding a lot of those for clients and putting a lot of work in. So it was really cool. Obviously spending that time with my wife up there was like unreal. She's tougher than most of the guys I've ever hunted with by far.
She's a hunter, obviously.
Yep. That was her first big game animal.
Nice.
the
Nice.
carbonated thing, yeah, was killing a nice caribou. So we were
Cool.
stoked on everything.
Yeah.
It's the country up there will ruin you for everywhere else, I would say. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. It makes
yeah.
it hard.
It's just gorgeous. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's different. It's way different than hunting in BC. Like, the space is massive,
Mm.
like
Which is saying something because I feel like when I hunt in the woods here that there's a lot of woods.
yeah, but there's a lot of everything here is a little tighter and
Mm.
steeper, and there's massive mountains. The Mackenzie Mountains are huge, but everything's kind of like, there's maybe like a long valley bottom to cross, and then you're gonna
Yeah.
go down, and you're gonna go, 12K down a valley bottom, and then up another drainage. Versus here, like, it's like down and up, and then that's what you're hunting for that time. And it's so
Yeah.
thick and timbered and shitty up here in the north, and like northern BC. You're like, yeah, like, that's, the down and up and the new thing. You're like, that's 4 days,
Yeah.
versus like up there, you're like, cool, yeah, we can hike 30K today, you know. Yeah,
Wow.
it's yeah.
Crazy.
And the other thing I think
Totally
that was
different
crazy
terrain.
was there's basically no dark, right? So,
Oh, yeah.
in the beginning, Ben was like, you just remember, man, you're gonna have to pace yourself, and
Yeah.
it's
And he
true.
would have to tell you that because you'd be like, let's go.
For sure. Like, it's true. Like, there's no need. Like, you can get up at 5 a.m. if you want to, and you can
Yeah.
get on the glass, but like, maybe you can do it for a couple days, but you can't. Like,
Yeah.
it's you can hunt almost nonstop, right? So
Wow.
it's yeah, which you can't, like, you can't look at
Yeah.
the glass, you can't look out the glass for that
You have
long,
to
you
take a
can't
break.
hike that
Yeah.
hard. So it's
Yeah.
just like, I'm not gonna say it's not hard or anything, because it is, but it's like more leisurely,
Hmm.
you're not like packed into the time frames and stuff, because it's
Yeah.
literally light all the time. So it was incredible. And I mean, Arctic Red is just an absolute world class operation. You can see why they are who they are,
Yeah.
doing it the right way. And I mean, I think Ben, a lot of his upbringing was, 11 years guiding out of Arctic Red, right? So you can see that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
his own character, but also like, it's a
Some
pretty,
history. Yeah.
amazing place to kind of cut your teeth on and be out of. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Very
all
cool.
very cool stuff. My time caribou hunting was just amazing, man. And it was the best. It was just like the best summer. So
Cool.
that
That's
kicked it
very
off,
neat.
and it was all good. It was nothing else really mattered after that. If I didn't go out one more time, I didn't care.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. Okay, to wrap things up, first, where can people find you if they want to get in touch and connect with you more?
Yeah, I think on Instagram is the best place. At Dr. Matt Ward DC is my one account. Then my other account is at Hard Yards Performance. Both on Instagram. Hit me up either way. Otherwise, like, I mean, yeah, I think that's probably the easiest way to do it. If you
Yeah.
don't have Instagram, find someone who does, and
Yeah.
then they can DM me on that.
You can message me on here and I'll connect you to Matt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
That's the easiest way to do it, though.
Yeah. Rapid fire wrap up questions. What's the one thing that you wish somebody had told you when you started hunting? That like one critical piece of advice.
Um, put more time in the off season,
Mm.
for
Mm-hmm.
sure. Yeah,
Yep.
you can learn just as much almost as you can in season in the off season.
Yeah, definitely.
Rubs, trails, water, so on and so forth. Like, you don't have to grind yourself into the dirt with the pack and like getting out there for all these times. But if you can, and you can spend more time kind of in the areas you might want to hunt, and in
Mm-hmm.
some new areas, and putting that time in, especially come spring, that kind of, I think it's going to pay off in dividends
Mm-hmm.
later on the line. Like, don't just because, you're like, oh, this is where and maybe once areas, maybe that's fine. And I'm sure you get lucky, but I feel like those guys who are killing cool stuff every year, like, like my good friend Kevin, and I know, Kevin as well, but
Mm-hmm.
like, I
Yeah.
see his year, right? And he's so super successful and all that stuff. I'm like, that guy's been successful forever because he's put in hard work every single year hunting an area for 30 years. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he
Yeah.
should be successful. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Well,
Like,
and it's not even just the animals, right? Like there's some areas that I hunt that I didn't get out to during the summer this year. And when I finally went back in the fall in season, half of it had been logged and part
Yep.
of it was ripped up and there was new roads through it and some of them
Yep.
were deactivated. And, it's not even just the animal sign that you get
Totally.
to familiarize yourself with. It's just the changes, especially in BC. I mean, obviously if you hunt in areas where they're not logging, which I don't know where that would be, but if you're hunting in areas where they're not logging, you wouldn't have that change. But there's often so much change happening just on the forestry side of things that it's
Yeah.
good to be familiar that, hey, that spot that you thought was going to be a dime this year is not, because it doesn't exist anymore.
Totally. Yep.
Yeah.
And exactly. Or you're seeing and you're like, wow, just so many more people are driving through here right now. You're
Mhm.
like, maybe that's going to want to change what's going on. Oh my
Yeah.
God. Like you spend a couple nights out there and you just hear just like packs of wolves constantly howling. You're like,
Yeah.
that's going to impact animal behavior in some way, shape, or form as well. So
Yeah.
it's just all that stuff. I think just getting used to the fact that you're going to have to put in more than just like a
Just the
couple
season.
weekends in
Yeah.
September.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
What is one thing that you should never do as a hunter?
I would probably say like an illegal harvest. I think that should
Yeah.
probably be like first and foremost.
Yeah.
I think the thing that I would love to say, like as far as things you should never do, one, just I've seen this a lot more lately. People stealing cams, and I mean I've had like
Mm.
a couple of my cams like erased, like
Mm.
zip ties cut, and then
Jeez.
pictures erased on cams, and I'm just like, get fucked. Like,
But they left your camera?
yeah. Yep.
That's
So
weird.
you just bring a card reader and they, whatever, and they
Yeah,
just
yeah.
delete the pics, and it's like that's
That's
it. You're
questionable.
like there's elk shit all in front of my cam, and there's no pictures of elk on my cam. Like
Yeah.
that's not possible. Like there's pictures of me on it, like
Yeah,
it
yeah.
works. So, anyways, I think there's some of that stuff that's just like just shitty. But I
Yeah.
think, yeah, I think,
Don't
and I
harvest
think
illegally and don't mess with other people's trail cams.
stuff. And then really, I think one of the other ones that is impacted this year, I think is, it's okay. It's okay to not pull the trigger if you're not sure.
Mm.
Right. I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of that. Like, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one for sure. Who is one person that you look up to in the hunting and conservation world?
mm, my friend Pete.
Yeah. From Wild
Yeah.
Sheep Society, Pete?
Yep. For
Nice.
sure. Yep. He is a great hunter, a great dad, a great man.
Mhm.
And behind the scenes of a lot of shit that
Mhm.
happens for
A
wild sheep
lot.
in this province.
Yeah.
And yeah, I respect that guy. I respect that guy a lot.
Yeah. He's a good guy for sure. What is the first animal you ever harvested? Or was it that black bear?
Black bear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the
Yeah.
first? You didn't even like no chickens before that? Nothing?
No.
Oh, wow.
No.
Going straight for the goods.
Yeah.
What is your favorite hunting snack?
Pepperoni.
Yeah.
Well, to be more specific, beer Beiser sausage, but that's it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Are you a one layer or double layer sock guy?
One layer.
Okay. Yeah, good socks. You don't need to double.
I've also got like hooves for feet. So like I could probably wear no socks in my boots. Like
Yeah, you
realistically.
got some
Yeah.
hobbit feet going on or what?
Oh yeah. But I also work like a lot of people who have consistent blisters, they have really poor foot, ankle, lower leg mechanics. So,
Oh,
yeah.
interesting. Okay. What's the one absolute essential item that you must have on every hunt? The one thing you cannot leave behind?
Your tags.
Oh, nobody's ever said that before.
Oh,
Everyone always says
man.
like their binos or their
No,
gun or whatever. But yeah,
your
tags, that's
tags.
pretty key.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Amazing. Well, thank you, Matt, for chatting with me today, for diving into a lot of what you do and the information that you offer and provide. If people want to get in touch with you, we will drop your contact information down below. And yeah, thank you again for coming on.
Amazing. Yeah. Thanks a ton for having me, and look forward to seeing you again in person soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for watching and listening, and make sure to hit that like and subscribe button and follow along wherever you get your podcasts. If you have any comments or reviews, drop them down below. I will read them and I will get back to you. Or you can reach me at questions@entrypointhunting.com. If you know someone who is an expert, offers great insights, and is growing in the field of hunting and firearms, please send them my way. I would love to get in touch with them. And until next time, friends, stay hungry.